Today we're making this, and regardless of the meat you choose, the flavor is delicious when it's done right. Good morning. I've been out on a nice cool morning after a good heavy rain. I can hear the birds. It's foggy out here, it's cool, and it's perfect for making absolutely excellent barbecue. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make barbecue, and of course barbecue is smoked meat, and it's regional, folks. The way barbecue is made and the way it is treated and the way it is sauced is very different one part of the United States from another. So you go to let's say Kansas, you're going to get different barbecue than Texas, and those two places are going to have different barbecue than North Carolina or from Tennessee. They all make different barbecue, folks. And in Texas we do our thing, and we usually do it with this right here. This is called mesquite wood. I absolutely love this stuff. That's what I'm going to be smoking with today, is mesquite wood again. You can use hickory, you can use pecan, which is a type of hickory. You can use apple wood, cherry wood, any kind of tree you want to chop down to cook your meat with. It will flavor it and it will taste good. Each one has a unique flavor. When it comes to which smoker is best, I'm not going to get into that argument. But I will say this, there's a lot of different smokers out there. Now I like to use this kind of smoker, it's my favorite. This is what's called an offset smoker. It's called an offset smoker because the Firebox, this little guy over here, is offset from this guy over here, which is the smoke box. And of course on these you have a chimney, you have to have some place for that smoke to go. And that is important, the chimney. I have seen people try to smoke with their chimney closed. It doesn't make for good barbecue. Another thing is, if you're interested in getting into barbecuing and you want to do it for competition, so you'll know most of the competitions will not allow you to use any form of propane, natural gas, electric. It has to be strictly wood, natural fire. So you can, they'll allow you to use charcoal because it is a natural wood product. And that is it. But as far as the pellet grills, you can't use those in most smoking competitions, unless rules are changing these days. And I doubt that, because this is sort of a sport almost, and it's kept very pure by a bunch of puerile kind of folks. But when it comes to good barbecue, that's what's required. You gotta be just really strict about it, because it is about flavoring the meat, how you cook it, how long you cook it, how much you smoke it, how the smoke flows over the meat. There's a lot of things going into this, and the temperature, that temperature matters more than you can imagine, because if it gets too high, you're going to stop getting good smoke penetration and you won't build a red band. That's another thing. I want to teach you what that red band is, how you get it, what causes it, where it comes from. All of that you're going to learn right here in this video. We're going to start by getting this thing fired up, because I can't do anything if the smoker's cold. All right, right now my smoker is cold and empty, and it needs a fire so it can get warmed back up. This video we're going to go into a lot of details, so kick back, grab something to drink, and get ready, because it's going to be everything I know about creating really, really good barbecue. How to smoke your meats the right way. Let's get started. This guy right here is what I begin with. This is a smoking chimney, and a lighting chimney. This is used for lighting charcoal, and in the bottom of it is a little screen that's raised up a little bit. I got some charcoal in there, and that little screen that is raised up allows you to put paper underneath there. You fill the top with charcoal, and when you light this thing, the paper burning will cause the charcoal to catch fire, and in turn it will light it all the way up, and it does so very quickly and cleanly and efficiently. And I will say, never, never, never use charcoal lighter fluid, and never use any kind of match light charcoal. Okay, avoid those products when it comes to smoking, especially if you have a new smoker. They can seriously affect the quality of the meat that comes out of your smoker. Now, I'm going to fill this up and we'll get started lighting it up. I have my chimney starter packed with charcoal. I've been putting some paper, and this is the same thing as newsprint, it just doesn't have the print on it. And basically this is packing paper from, you know, when you go to U-Haul or whatever and you get paper to move, and that's the paper they sell you, it's packing paper. So works great for this. Would like to mention, number one, the brand of charcoal doesn't really matter. Number two is charcoal wood. Yeah, it is. They just take small, or they take wood and they shred it down and pack it into a mold and then superheat it so that it comes out like this, charred. And the thing of it is, between this and natural charcoal, this will burn a little longer than natural charcoal. So this will burn for the same amount of time as a big lump of natural. They both do the same thing and they both do it equally well. You choose which you prefer, or if you want, just go with regular wood and burn that only. However, this has a tendency to burn a little hotter. It will heat up the smoker more and it'll be harder to control. So you're going to be using small pieces of it and keeping your fire little. Okay, that needs to be mentioned also. I have a lighter right here. I like to use this to light these, and if you don't want to use the paper, you can use a propane torch like this to light one of these rather quickly. All right, it's not that hard, but always light from the bottom, and that way the fire that's coming up through here will light everything up quickly. All that heat and those flames light everything very, very fast. Now, you've heard me say never use the petroleum products like lighter fluid. And if you're wondering why I say that, well, it's because it gives the meat a petroleum flavor. Ugh. Trust me, it's not a good flavor. You do not want it in your barbecue. And if you've ever had barbecue without it, and then you try something that was cooked on a smoker or a grill that had used matchlight charcoal or charcoal that had been lit with, let's say, lighter fluid, then you'll notice the flavor immediately. It's very petroleum-y. It's not a good flavor. So I really recommend avoiding the use of petroleum products at all. And the second reason is that petroleum oil, even after the fire has burned off, some of that oil remains in the charcoal or the wood that you lit it with. It will burn and build up as a skin on the inside of the smoker box, and it actually does flavor the meat, and it doesn't flavor it in a pleasant way. Don't ever use it, don't ever start using it, and never subject your smoker to it, and you never have to worry about that. And I promise you, after a year of eating barbecue without any kind of lighter fluid, the first time that you eat barbecue that has been made with lighter fluid, you will instantly taste it. I promise you that. When you grow up with something, you've been eating it all your life, you get to where you don't notice certain flavors occurring, and so that's what happens there. This will eventually light up, and when it is starting to ash on top, I'm going to pour it right over here into the Firebox. The Firebox, I will then start nurturing that fire. I'll add some more charcoal to it. Once the temperature of the whole thing is up to the right temp, then, and only then, we will start putting the meat in here. But there's a lot to do until then. So prepping the smoker before you cook is one of the important things that we do. And this is where it starts. My fire is lighting up really well. The orange portion of the fire is up to about here right now, and it won't be much longer before these are lit. The smoke that's coming off of it is strictly wood smoke now. If you notice, the color is a different color than earlier when the paper was burning. Smoke color is going to play a role in what we do today and in the quality of what comes out of this. Because if your smoke is gray, it's not going to make for good tasting barbecue. If it's blue and wispy, like this kind of blue here, then that's where you get good barbecue flavor. And it's about controlling the temperature of your fire. Okay, and that's all there is to it, plain and simple. You get the right temperature, the right thing going on down in here. And what comes out of this chamber is absolutely magnificent. And your best barbecue people know this. So I'm going to let that come up. As soon as it starts to ash on top, I'm going to pour it down in here. And I'm going to forewarn you, before you go trying to pour one of these things off, put on a pair of gloves, okay? Some leather gloves or something like that. I keep some around just for barbecue and cooking. Do that, otherwise you're going to singe your knuckles. These things get extremely hot, okay? It's just radiating heat right now all around it, and very, very hot. So definitely handle with care. All right, this has come up in temperature. It is quite hot. So when you're moving one of these, do it with 2 hands, be careful. And I want to take this and we're just going to pour it straight in right down here. I want to set this aside and let it cool. In a little bit, I'm just going to dust off the ash I have here, and I'll use a hose and spray down the ground underneath this because I've got a mess down here from before I even started. My fire over here in the firebox. Folks, get yourself some tongs or something to work your firebox with. Something that you can reach down in there, grab a hold of something, move it around as you need to, okay, because it's going to happen. After you get your fire in here and get it started, add a little extra charcoal on top. This is important because what you have here has gotten really, really hot, partially incinerated, and you're going to want to go ahead and replace what you've cooked off there. The top ones are just getting lit. This is going to make a nice fire. Now, if you notice, I've mounded everything in the center, and that's on purpose. I don't want any fire on the metal box on the sides because that's where I'm going to take wood. Let me see if I can get a piece here. I'll be taking wood and putting it against that back wall of the firebox, getting it to heat up and smolder nicely. For the meantime, though, I want it right down there in my bucket of hot water, just soaking up water and getting ready. The water does slow some of the combustion on it. It's a healthy thing to do, and it works really well when it comes to making some good barbecue. So I'll keep my fire in the middle, work the smoking wood around the sides, and I get a very good combination here between charcoal and natural wood. Another thing I want to mention is over here on the side you have what's called a damper door. Let's take a look at that and how the thing functions. So our damper door is this guy right down here, this little door, okay? And the reason they call it a damper door is it's a door that has a damper built into it. Now the damper is important. It allows air in for the fire. Most of the time though, if you have it all the way open, it's going to produce a very, very hot fire. It depends on the temperature outside. If you have a 100-degree day, this is too much air. You don't want to choke this thing down because this thing is going to stay hot and it's going to take a very small fire to work it. On a cool day though, or a cold day, you're going to be relying strictly on the fire to heat the whole unit, and so you're going to want this open, a hotter fire. And so really this becomes a trick of what is the outside temperature, the humidity, what's your altitude, and so forth and so on, and how wide are you going to need this relative to how much fire do you have going on inside. What is the temperature you're trying to achieve in the smoke chamber? And it all relates. So this is where it kind of turns into an art form, okay? It's a simple thing, yet there's a lot of nuance to it, okay? Now, I'm going to get some more charcoal in here, close this off. We're going to take a look inside of our smoke chamber and get it ready for smoking. Okay, that extra charcoal in here. And sometimes you get those bricks that go flying off anywhere they want. You have to give them a little encouragement, and that's where those tongs really kind of come in handy. And I'll keep these tongs down in my water bucket with the wood. It keeps them cool. It washes them off in case I have to do something up in the smoke box, but I'll have other tongs for the meat. And so this sort of becomes general purpose. Next thing, need to ready that smoke box. And we'll start by closing this. Sometimes you get a lot of smoke going on up in here, and it gets a little messy working, but you'll learn to get used to it. Now, first thing I want to do, I'm just going to wipe down any of that ash that got kicked up from when I was preparing the charcoal. And I have some pans here. I'm going to put these in the bottom of this right here. And I want to do it for two reasons, all right? Reason number one of them is going to hold water. It's going to have hot water in it. It's going to be right over here next to the heat box, or the firebox. So it gets lots of heat and it will ignite or cause that water to boil. So what I recommend is you line the bottom of your smoke chamber with these wonderful little guys. And the idea here is it'll catch the majority of the fat that drips. Some of the fat's going to hit the bottom of your smoker and it's going to drip out. And that just happens. Now you need to be prepared for that too. There's a bucket I have on the other side that catches all of my drippings off of my smoke chamber here. Most of the drippings will be caught in these pans and I don't have that mess down there. Also, like I said, one of these becomes a pan that provides moisture. That moisture is important. We're going to be trying to keep moisture in the meat, not to cook the moisture out. And when you're cooking for literally an entire day, you have to do some special things to keep that meat moist. This is one of them. Another is going to be a mop sauce, and that comes in just a little bit. Now, I'm already producing good smoke, but that's just the new charcoal lighting up. Pretty soon, we'll be producing a nice wispy blue smoke that will be from the wood, and it will be fantastic. My temperature goal today is to keep this as close to 225 as absolutely possible. Sometimes it runs cold, you know, I'll be cooking at 180, 200. Sometimes it runs a little hotter and I'm a little under 250. But you never want to go over to 50 because then you're going to be ruining the ability to, well, create that red band and get better meat, smoke penetration to the meat. The red band, that's a reaction between chemicals in this smoke, nitrates and nitrites, and the myoglobin in the meat, preserving it, causing it to remain red or become even a little more red. Now, as I mentioned before, down here we have a bucket for anything that drips out. There's a drip hole here and a little hanger just for that bucket. My chimney, this is important. The chimney, when you're smoking, this little cover, folks, this is actually not to create more smoke in the smoker. This is to keep rainwater from getting down in there. All right. As a general rule, this needs to be open, all the way open. Okay. The temperature and the smoke flow and the amount of smoke and everything else is created and controlled strictly at the firebox. All this is an outlet allowing what's in there to travel through quickly and escape. You don't want the smoke staying in the smoke box too long because then it has a tendency, well, to create bitter off tones. So we don't want any off bitter flavors being created with our meats. We want a clean, smoky flavor, just as if you had cooked over a campfire. And the way to do it is to keep the smoke rushing over the meat. And so that's what we tried to do here. As I mentioned, hot water. It doesn't have to be boiling. I just use hot tap. But I like to get some water down in there. And it doesn't have to be like a huge amount, all right? If I have to add more later, that's fine. But it's better than having a full pan right here of drippings and water to have to deal with later. So don't fill it completely, okay? Unless you got like really big ones. If you're using like a big roasting pan or something, then that's fine. Go ahead and add a little more. Anyway, this still has to stabilize. I get my fire stable and my temperature at 225. Then I'm going to be putting meat out here, okay? I'm not going to be doing anything until then. Now, folks, today I'm going to be doing more than one cut of meat. I'm going to be doing this brisket. I'm also doing a picnic roast, or some people call it a butt roast, which has nothing to do with the butt of the pig. It's actually the shoulder. I'll be doing that, also a chicken. And but one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to separate some of the fat from this meat, as well as separate the different cuts of muscle from each other. In other words, we have a lot of muscle going on here. I've had the point, which is a group of muscles that stretch under the bottom here, and the flat, which is over the top, and then a huge layer of fat that runs from here straight across to the other side, and it comes out here, and that's what you're seeing here and here, and that's what I'm about to separate there. So I'm just going to, not so gently, take my knife and start working it through this and taking out some of the more heavy fat. Now when I start seeing meat like this, I want to avoid going too deep. Okay, so I'm going to back off a little bit. There we go. I'm getting into some of that point meat right there. All right, and there it is, pulling out the bottom. Just come around, and again, I'm not trying to remove all of that fat, just enough of it so that I get it out of the way of the good smoke penetration. Now, some of the fat is going to render through the meat, and we want to keep it for that reason. But that much cannot fully render out in the smoking time of an entire day. So what we do is we simply remove the excess fat. Now, I can say this, I would have some Texans livid that I am removing any fat whatsoever. For in some circles, this is considered a mortal crime right here. So, yeah, they're quite serious about barbecue in the state of Texas. And there's a lot of pride that goes along with this. So, when it comes to stuff like this, do you trim, do you not? There's argument and a lot of debate there. I believe you do, but just not all of it. So basically give it a good controlled amount of fat, but get rid of any ridiculous chunks of fat like that. Okay? There we go. Now, I have, like I said before, two muscles here. One of them, flip this over, this point kind of comes down and across this way, right about here. Okay, and that's the way it is on pretty much any brisket. And that's what I want to do here, is just separate that point meat. And it extends down a little bit, kind of an angle this way. So be prepared for that as you're cutting it. There we are. See there, hitting that meat. Now, I have a second layer of meat right down here, and that's that flat. So I don't want to cut down nor up. I don't want to hit either of those two. There we go. And remember, if you do happen to accidentally catch just a little bit of it, well, guess what? It's not going to hurt a thing, folks. Your brisket's going to come out just fine despite any of that, okay? Now, we're almost to a good trimming point there. There we are. There. So if you'll notice, what I do is I'll lift the point muscle up. And if you'll see right down here, when I do that, it'll stretch some of that fat. I just gently cut along that stretched fat each time. See there? And it's separating those two muscles. That's all you really have to do, folks. It's not too hard to separate these, okay? Now, here we go. Sometimes, like I said, you can get off into the little of the meat. Don't lose any sleep over it. It'll smoke up just fine. There we go. So there's my point. There's the flat. That's all it took to separate them. I do want to keep some of this fat, but as I mentioned before, too much is just too much. And if you'll notice, when I'm working something like this, I'll use a full stroke on that knife, all right? Don't be afraid to use the entire blade when you're working a piece of meat like this. Now, here we are. Okay, here is my brisket flat. I have this exactly where I want it to do smoking, okay? Any more fat removal, for the most part, isn't going to benefit me. It's going to hinder me. I want this fat to be available. Now, here's a little bit of a thick chunk right here. And that's the reason I'm kind of double checking this on the sides and edges to make sure I don't run into this right here. Alrighty, there we go. So that smoke will easily go through a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch of fat, but when you start getting more fat than that, it begins to get real difficult for you to get smoke down to those layers, okay? Now, and that's what we want. We want smoke in the layers of meat with enough fat to enhance it. All right, I'll move this out of my way and get on with trimming the rest of this point. All right, got my point out of the way. There is a little wedge of fat right here still. Take that one out. And if that fat is a little even, kind of rough from where you've cut it, big deal. Remember, it's about to get partially melted off in a smoker, and then we're going to finish it off in a different way at the very end to make it even more subtle and moist and delicious. So, you know, it's not a big deal if that fat isn't perfectly even. Now, notice though, I've got meat very close underneath this, so I don't want to really go too deep on any of that. What I'm looking at are the edges, any edge fat that's just unneeded, like I have right down here. So I want to cut into this. I'll take off just a little of the meat, not enough to worry about, but it's going to trim this up so I don't get as much burning, okay? Now I want a little bit of burnt ends, okay, because that is part of good barbecue. Folks love those burnt ends. There we go, see there, a little meat here, just enough fat there, and we got a wedge of fat right here that I'm going to go ahead and deal with. Let me see here. Nope, nope, not that deep. There we go, right there. Okay, turn him over, again that edge. And another thing I'd like to mention, when you're doing stuff like this, folks, please keep the knife pointed away from you. Don't cut like this. This is what they call the suicide cut, because it can come loose right back at your gut. So never do anything that foolish, okay? Always point that blade away. All right, looks like I have a really nice looking point here. Now the point, I want to say this, is absolutely filled with fat. Very, very fatty cut. And if you're planning on doing what they call chopped barbecue or chopped barbecue sandwich, this is the baby to do it with right here. It makes such good chopped barbecue. And it has to do everything with that fat content and the stringiness of the meat combined. The two equal very, very good quality. Now, fat up here. And what I have done is I've actually removed a couple of pounds from this, which was originally a 15-pound brisket. Now, folks, a 15-pound brisket's fairly sizable. In my years of cooking, the largest one I've actually handled and worked with was 18 pounds and some ounces. The smallest one I ever worked with was 8 pounds and some ounces. I don't remember the exact weight. But I've worked them from that to the other, and I can say this, brisket's a brisket. They do take long cooking, but the bigger the brisket, the longer the cook, and that's all there is to it. So if you want a little bit faster cook on these briskets, you might want to look for a smaller one. Go for something a little less robust. One like this is going to take a lot more time, but what I've done here, I've separated it, and it's going to be more like cooking two of the smaller ones. So I think I've got a good thing going on. Now, another question, do you use a rub or not? You can, all right. This time I have no plans on using a rub. However, I want to say this, for your rubs, they're pretty simple. There's a grouping of spices and herbs that work great. My favorites for doing rubs are garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, cayenne, and cumin for red meat like this. And the same thing for pork. Pork, I might take one of those out, like the cumin, and put in coriander. All right, some ground coriander seed. That gives a very good flavor to pork. Now chicken, I'll make further changes to chicken. I will often use herbs in the chicken like thyme, sage. Sage works really good when you're doing smoking of the chicken. So that's a neat way to go there. Here we have our brisket. It looks like it has been fixed up nice and pretty for smoking, and I'm about ready to move on to the next cut, which I believe is going to be that pork roast. Get that one little bit there. Good penetration there. And this is ready for the fire. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a pork shoulder. Sometimes it goes by the name of a picnic roast. Other times it goes by the name of a butt roast. Either way, it is neither a butt nor, well, I guess you could have it for a picnic, but it isn't a picnic in itself. So what we want to do, I've got a bone running through this right here, okay? I want to do a couple of things here. I want to remove any excess fat that I have, and I wouldn't mind getting that one bone out of my way right there. So, there we go. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm cutting underneath this muscle right there to finish cutting down to my bone, which is right there. Right along this side here. Okay, now what I need to do is basically to remove a bone, you're just going to butterfly around it, and there is no smooth way of knowing. Unless you've done a million pork roasts, then folks, you're just going to sort of fight your way around what's there. Now up here, I have the other end of this, which is a separate piece. There we go. So if you notice what I did, I turned that roast around for the sole purpose of cutting away from myself. You remember what I mentioned earlier there? Okay. Let's see what I'm doing. Still just following along it. Now you're not going to get every bit of meat off of that bone. You can't do that. It doesn't work that way in this world. See right here I have one part of a joint and I have the ball right here. Another part of that shoulder joint, okay? So, now, once you get this out, something else that you can do, and that is you can go ahead and cook this up if you have a dog, or if you just want to use it to flavor some stock for stew or soup or something like that. Yeah, this has a lot of good purposes, okay? You know, you see me will remove fat like I did on that brisket, and we're going to remove fat on this. Ladies and gentlemen, all of the fat can be used. It can be saved and rendered out. And when we render out fat, you know, all it is just you're cooking it essentially. You're heating it until it melts, and the part that melts and separates from the solid, that's your usable rendered fat, okay? So you could take the fat that you cut from this or from your brisket. I don't recommend combining them, but you can take those, boil them, and what separates and hardens later in the refrigerator in the liquid you boil, that is your saturated fat that makes for good tallow. Okay, and of course if it's pork, then it's going to be lard. It's that simple. Okay. Cutting right along that bone. We've almost got it extracted there. All right. Isn't that nice? So I know you were wanting to see how smoking is done. Well, folks, yeah, sometimes when you're buying your meats, you don't get a choice on what's on sale, and bone-in was what was on sale. Now this right here, as I mentioned with the beef, you can't really cook through or smoke through all of the fat. So you might as well remove the excess fat, and that's what I'm about to do here. Now that's a dangerous cut there. Turn that under. There we are. Now, again, you see how I'm lifting it and just cutting along the fat line. Now there I got up into the meat, and if you do that, just cut upwards back into that fat. There we go. All there is to it. And again, we're in the meat, cut up into that fat, and we bypass that meat just like that. Okay? Don't want to get rid of all of that fat, but I do want to get rid of the bulk. So that big slab right there, all done. This, looky there, I have a butterflied pork shoulder, and that sucker right there is going to smoke beautifully. All right, now I also have a dog, and my dog is going to love this right here. Oh yeah. All right, the chicken. Now what is there to do on the chicken? Well, in this case, I'm not trying to roast it, so I'm not going to bother with tying it up the way I would normally do. I would normally truss a chicken to cook it. Well, in this case, I'm going to be just smoking it, okay? I'll be cooking it later in a different way after it is smoked. But the smoking process itself, I just want it to splay open and smoke or absorb as much of that smoke as absolutely possible. I want it to get all smoked up as good as I can get it. So there's really not much to do. The skin will block some smoke penetration, but not all. If you want to remove the skin, you can do that. However, you're going to be using your mop sauce very frequently for the chicken because it will dry out otherwise. Next thing is we get this on the smoker and we take a look at what a mop sauce is and what it does for us. Ladies and gentlemen, my temperature is a little over 225. It's right about 230. I'm going to start getting meat up on this. All right. So we have here our flat from that brisket. Okay. Now with that salt, in this game, you can be generous, okay? And the reason I say this is I'm going to be bringing in a mop in a little bit. And the other thing is we're cooking with some really big cuts here. The mop is going to wash some of the salt off. So between big cut and washing some of it off later, let's go ahead and just get it salted liberally now, okay? Flip these over, do both sides, and you've got things up and running. I have my fire up and running. Listen to that sizzle. I'm just getting the wood right up on the sides like I mentioned earlier. And I have this nice wet wood that's going to do a beautiful job smoking for us. There we go. So what's going to happen now, I'm going to put a little more charcoal in here. We're going to get that fire built up a little bit more. And I've had to close my damper. When I first came out and checked this after processing my meats, this was just at 250, and that's just on the high end of what I want. So I wanted to bring it down. I closed my damper so it's only got an inch opening down here. Now I need to put some more charcoal in, get it closed, and we're going to be smoking. So if you'll notice, when I put charcoal in, I don't heap mounds of charcoal in there. It doesn't take that. I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 25 bricks up in here. And that's more than enough when I'm getting it re-going. Now, later on in the day, as I'm adding more, I'll only be adding about 12 to 15 charcoal briquettes at a time. And I do that every 45 minutes to an hour, usually. Depends on the circumstances. So right now, close this, and we'll let our meat smoke. I'm making a mop sauce. Now folks, a mop sauce is an important thing. Mop sauce helps us to lock moisture in our meat, okay? That's the oil, that's what it does right there. A mop sauce helps us, take a look at that. That looks to me like right at 2 cups. You'd never guess from the number of years I've done this, right? So I need about a half a cup of vinegar, that right there. If I want to add anything to this in the way of spices, I can do that. It would be like black pepper. I could add in paprika. Those are both really good additions to this. There we go. Now, how much black pepper? Well, if you're just measuring it in, I'd say, hey, put in a teaspoon to a tablespoon to these 2 cups of oil. All right, so like I said, there's a broad spectrum of how much you can use. And the same thing on that paprika. We'll put in about a teaspoon there. There we go. Now I need to take this and boil it up, plain and simple. Nothing else needs to be done. Once it's boiled, it's ready to go on the meat, okay? Well, it is smoking right now. My temperature, just right at about 210 degrees. All right, and it's slowly warming up. It'll come up to 225. I just got to make sure that I don't get it too hot. So I check it frequently. Now the color of my smoke, see, it's got that bluish quality. When I first put the charcoal in there, it gives a little bit of a gray smoke, but for the most part that'll dissipate quickly, and then you get this nice blue, even smoke. And that is a well-controlled fire, and that's the right kind of smoke. That's what we're looking for right there. Now, of course, if you're going to smoke, you're going to get smoked, okay? You're going to smell like smoke. Your clothes are going to smell like smoke. It's part of the game, and it's kind of like being around a campfire. You're going to get the same effect from it. However, the flavors in the food are fantastic. Now, I've got my mop out here, and my mop sauce is behind me. By the way, that is what this is for. You see this little flat place on top of the Firebox. That's actually put there for the purpose of keeping things warm, all right? So put it to use for that. And once the meat has been on there for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, that's when I start doing my mop sauce. Okay, so we're getting really close to needing that mop sauce. Not quite yet. So here it is. Enjoy your smoking. This is an all-day game. Move the meat pieces around a little bit, turn them, move positions and locations, because this end is hot, that end is cool. So I will rotate the brisket, and then I will change it out with that piece of pork, the pork shoulder. And I'm going to keep the chicken on that end because poultry does better with cooler smoking. That's looking absolutely beautiful. Now, if I want you to notice, that mop sauce sitting right there over my Firebox was just boiling away, doing what it's supposed to do. And it doesn't take a lot of it. Just give a nice, gentle coat of the mop sauce over your food. And this early on, mostly what this is doing is providing that coating of oil. Now, the briskets have got so much fat in them. It's not like they need a lot of this, but where they're just solid meat, they do need some, okay? And I'll get that on that part later on. Well, I've spent many hours today doing this. Just been kicking back, relaxing, watching videos, and occasionally coming out, hitting it with the mop sauce. That's the reason it's glossy looking. And attending the fire so it has enough smoke. Right now I need to attend to the fire so I can get that smoke rolling again. It's coming out a little bit, but we need more. The meat is cooking wonderfully. It's looking good. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this chicken out. I'm going to put it in a Dutch oven. There we go. I have the oven heating up. So I'll be putting the chicken in the Dutch oven in the oven at 325 degrees. And this is just to finish it off. It's just to bring it up in temperature. The effect, the smoke effect is there. It's done. It's ready. All I need to do is finish off the cook. And I can do that by a method called braising. Now I can also leave the chicken out here, but if I do that, the meat will be a little drier than if I do it this way. If I do it this way, the meat will be very juicy and moist. And when it is cooked this way, it'll be an exciting, wonderful dish. So I'm looking forward to doing this and getting it out to the person that I had prepared this one for. So that's the real trick there, folks. It's just each one of these cuts will go through the same process. I'll be putting the pork in the oven in a couple of hours, and I'll be slow cooking it until it's done, and then at the end of the day I'll pull in the brisket, put it in the oven, and give it a few hours in there also. And what that braising does, again, adds moisture to the meat, makes it more tender, and you don't lose any of this that's been going on because that flavor has penetrated the meat and made it very good. It is a new day, and I've got a little bit of a mess in here to clean up, get those pans cleaned out, and whew, boy, it smells like barbecue. I'll say that. Regardless, the whole thing came out great. The meat was fantastic. I've got just a little bit of pork and a little bit of brisket left, and that's all. And the rest of it was just devoured. I had several sandwiches myself, and a lot of other folks had plenty as well. So this was a successful barbecue, and it was fantastic tasting, a lot of fun to do. Thing about this is, like I've told a lot of folks, when you're going to do a barbecue, if it's actually going to be smoked meat barbecue, you either need to begin the night before and smoke through the night so the meat is fresh for the next day, or smoke the day before, finish the meat off in the oven, and then just reheat it slightly in the morning or the next day when it's time for your barbecue. That way you're not working yourself to death. You get the same quality. That meat isn't going to change overnight. It'll still be delicious and fresh and good. And the neat thing about finishing off barbecue with a simple short braise is it makes it a little juicier and a whole lot more tender, and it's something that you'll really enjoy. Thank you for watching. Please look in the description box. You're going to see some links there. Ooh, the sun shines bright today. You're also going to see some information about Texas cooking today that'll help explain a little more about why I always do 2 videos. And then if you would, please take a look at my recipes. That's on my website, S.A.Trotter.com. Keep watching. There's a short clip right after this that explains my recipes and why I do them the way I do them. You folks have a good day. Bye-bye. I wanted to mention to you my recipes. Yes, I sell my recipes. Okay, look, some people, they give the recipes out for free and they charge for the tutorial. So I do it the opposite on YouTube. You get the tutorial for free, I charge for the recipe. I did a lot of work, a lot of writing, a lot of extra stuff that goes with this, okay? Come over a little closer, let me show you one of these up close so you really realize what you're getting. And then also, I'm offering one for free. We'll take a quick look at that right now. Come here. This is what I'm talking about right here. When I fill out a recipe, when I write one, I always bullet point all of the ingredients, okay? A simple one or a complex one. I, in addition, number the instructions, and often I'll give pictures with it. Now, not all of them are this well done, but this is what I'm going for on every single one from here on out. All of my new recipes you're going to see done this way. And on the end of the recipe, there's always a place for notes for yourself, okay? Right now, go to my website. You're going to get this one right here for free, okay? Cinnamon rolls. Enjoy that cinnamon rolls recipe and take a look at the others I have. They're really worth your time.